guys, like to welcome you guys all back to my channel, and today I'm here with my February reads and possibly my March TBR, depends on how long I talk in this video. So, looking at this, also I've gotten questions about where I got this from, and it actually came in an owl crate last year. I'll leave the link to the video, but yeah, it's pretty awesome. I've got some critiques on it, but so far it's pretty good. And this month I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I read 6 books. So we probably should just start. It's a pretty hefty stack. So let's see where we're going with this. The first book that I finished in February, which I kind of talked about in my January wrap up, but I just wanted to talk about it again, is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nagin. I've actually done a full makeup book review for this video. I will leave the link up above, but I had a lot of strong opinions about this book. I gave this book, I think, a 3 out of 5 stars, just because I felt that it might have been a little overhyped, but I still thought that it was a good read. The sexual violence, the sexual assault thing is very real, but I think that she handled it in a very classy way, so it wasn't completely in your face crazy, but at the same time you knew it was coming, so I felt a lot of like worry and anticipation for it to come up and happen, but once it actually does, the story kind of takes off further. So yeah, I have more to say, but you have to check out the review video that I did for it to find out my thoughts. The next book that I read for the month of February was our book club read of the month, which was My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyoiken Brathwaite. I can still never say her name correctly. I have a lot of thoughts on this. Again, we did a full live book review for this. If you guys have not joined our live book reviews, you can join our book club down below with Goodreads, and you guys can check us out. I think this month will be March 24th, which we'll talk about, later, but woo, this roller coaster of a little book right here. I do highly recommend the audiobook. I feel that the person doing the voice really kind of captures the emotion, and like just the dynamic between Corday and Iola is just insane. It really it's a different perspective about a very serious sister relationship that's pretty much built on all types of crazy foolishness. I loved to hate this book. But if you guys want to know more about that thought, again, live video will be linked down below. I would love if you guys join us for our next one. The next book that I read this month was Black Enough, Stories of Being Young and Black in America. It is edited by E.B. Zolboy, but is written, all the stories are written by different authors, such as Daniel Clayton, Nick Stone, Lyra Tammany, E.B. Zolboy herself, Lamar Giles. I enjoyed this book because I felt that, like the definition of Black, it translated differently for everyone. So everyone's stories represented a piece of Blackness that I guess you might not be able to identify with, but somebody else could identify. Like the nerdy Black guy, I completely identified with him. Just the feeling of isolation because you aren't what they consider Black enough wherever you live. That's something I completely identified with. I didn't identify with the gay. Obviously, I'm not gay. But I felt that their stories deserved to be told just as much as mine did. I would have loved to have been able to call myself a writer and contribute to this book, but it did not disappoint. I know a lot of people didn't like this book, which I don't really understand why, because they are stories told from a person's perspective. So it's like, if you didn't identify with it, then that story obviously was not for you. But there were plenty of stories in here that you could have found something that you could have related to, if that makes any sense. The next book that I read was Firestarter. This is the third and final book to the Timekeeper series that I started reading last year. The one where I said it was very weird because it was supposed to be this LGBTQ relationship, but the relationship was actually a dude with a clock spirit. Yeah, so I actually kept reading, and I talked about Chainbreaker, I think, in September, because I remember I listened to that one while I was in Morocco. So I did finish it because I thought, why not? I didn't know who was the bad guy. The whole story, at the end of Chainbreaker, you think it's one guy. But while in this book, I think we were introduced to like 5 different groups of people who had something terrible to do in London. And I was just trying to understand, like, why does everybody have to be bad? and who actually is good. Because even the main character had moments where it didn't really make sense with the rest of his character. I felt that Colton, who is actually the clock spirit, his story is actually revealed in Chainbreaker, but the evolution of him and his story are actually interesting enough for me to keep reading. I didn't understand Daphne most of the time. She was one of those filler characters where I guess you just didn't care. But the one thing that I just truly got annoyed with is all the random makeout scenes. It's like, how many times am I going to have to hear about him putting his chest closer to another person's chest and feeling their air take away? Like, I don't care. Has nothing to do with itis. They still gonna die. So why do I have to hear about every makeout scene? And every makeout scene was at least 3 or 4 paragraphs. And I love fantasy stories, but I just want to know why I got to hear about them kissing every 2 pages. I get it. They're in love. Let's move on. I finished my reread of the Harry Potter series, and every time I get to the Deathly Hallows, it is always such a bittersweet, happy feeling because, one, I always forget how much those 2 movies, it took 2 movies to even get partial the amount of stuff in this one book, and they still didn't get all of it. So every time I reread it, I'm like, man, I completely forgot all of that even happened. Like, whoa, totally forgot Hollywood changed that whole scene. Like, I just love it. Obviously, I'm going to reread the book again because it's just such a great book. I definitely think that I got used to the guy's voice for the audiobook, but I still would love it if they redid the audiobooks as a full cast, because that would be really good. Because I'm sorry, he sucked at female voices and they always sounded like they were whining, but we finished. The last book that I read for the month of February is The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. This is my first Roshani Chokshi book. I do actually want to read more of her. I like her writing style, but The Gilded Wolves was actually, I think I gave it like a 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't think that it was super absolutely amazing. My main reason being it took me a while to get into the story. The story is such a dense story, so it's like you're trying to understand the world, but you have to understand the history of the world to understand why they're doing what they're doing. And so it's so much information that you're trying to grasp. It's told from 4 different perspectives. Let's see. That's the best way I can describe the story. So this story takes place in Paris in a fantasy world where once the Tower of Babel was destroyed, the tower turned into Babel fragments, and each country or region has families who are put in place to protect the location of the Babel fragments so that no one ever tries to use them for bad or good. And the families that protect these fragments, they have a matriarch or a patriarch over them, and like they're kind of the elite of the order. I think they're called the Order. I kind of forgot what they're called, but the Order. And there's one guy, his name is Severin, and his father was a patriarch for one of the houses, but it turned out that he was an illegitimate child according to them, so he lost everything. So this whole book was him focusing on trying to get his birthright back and trying to get his house back. And we have Enrique, who is a historian who is half Filipino, half Spanish, but looks Spanish so he can get away with certain things. So he's there. Then we have Layla, who, if I understand correctly, is not human, but I'm not really sure what she is because they don't explain her enough. She's kind of like this con woman. She's great. And then we have Zovia, who is this young Jewish Russian who's like an engineer. She's super smart. And then we have Tristan, who he's like a flower guy. So the powers in this book, this sounds so confusing. Oh my gosh. So Tristan and Zovia have powers where hers deals with like metals and his deals with like plants. Like the magic is not the focus of this story like you think it is. It's actually the heist, because technically they're just a bunch of thieves and it gives you like an Ocean's 11 vibe, but they end up getting stuck in this conspiracy where they have to basically end up saving the world. And once I finally understood the direction it was going, I really liked the book. But I don't know how long it took me to get there, and I can understand why people DNF the book because It's very confusing. It's a very convoluted story in the beginning, but now I understand it enough to where I want to read the second book, but not enough to where I can explain it. As you can see, I kind of failed explaining it just now, but yeah, The Gilded Wolves. So I'm actually going to stop the video here. I will post my March TBR obviously after this video, but thank you guys so much for checking out my video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, let me know what you read in February, what you think I probably should read at some point. Again, thanks so much. Bye guys.